Pessoal, sem mais delongas, eu quero chamar aqui ao palco e pedir uma salva de palmas para Arie van Bennekum. Mr. Bennekum.
Good morning. I do apologize for not speaking Portuguese, okay? So it will be English. I have my friend Geronimo here, and if you see him doing this, it's not dirty language. He's telling me to slow down so that I don't speak too fast, okay? So I could have asked, what are you looking for? I spoke to a couple of people, but let me start with a little bit of introduction about myself, okay? And somebody told me, Arie, it's not appropriate to tell your age, so I will not tell my age, but I'm born in 1964, and I'm from the Netherlands, right? Very small country. I started my career in the healthcare. So this is 1984. And then after a couple of years, I decided to stop. I went into the army. And then after a year and a half, I thought, okay, now we stop this as well. And I became a software developer. That's my story. This is January 1, 1987. And I'm telling you this because I'm leading up to, Agile Manifesto. Where does it come from? It was 1994 that I was working in a Dutch government on a big, traditionally managed waterfall project. And I was in the technical design team. And to be honest, I had two technical designers with me in the room, and we chatted and we had coffee, and on Mondays we talked about the football and the children and that kind of stuff. But, the rest of the team, we had a project team of 30 people. I cannot recall that I saw anybody else except for one functional designer. And it made me feel uncomfortable. I came in the morning after an hour and a half in the car. Then I got a document, a functional design document. And then I started translating that into a technical design document. And this is the old days when you had, trolleys going through the passage of the building with paper post, and I put my paper technical design in an envelope, and it went to somebody that I never saw. I never met, I never talked to this person. And then at one moment in time, it was May 1994, it was like maybe 9:30, I was sitting in my room with the other two technical designers. The project manager came in and he said, hey, can we have a meeting at 10 o'clock with the whole project team? So we got into a room, 30 people, and 10:15, everybody was out. Those 30 people were almost all external people, and the project was stopped. Can you imagine? You work for 7 months with 30 people full-time on a project, and the project was stopped, just killed. And I was, you go downstairs because you're told to go home or to the office. I was working for a consultancy firm, and I was standing next to my car with my car key in my hands. And I thought, what's this? Because I was working for a governmental organization, and a governmental organization means public money, right? Our money. And I don't know how you get out of bed in the morning, but in general already I feel that if I get out of bed and I do work for a client, then I want to be able to say at the end of the day, I delivered. And I delivered something that is valuable to my customer, whoever the customer is. For me, it becomes even more sensitive if it's public money. I have an allergy for wasting public money. Public money should be spent on elderly care, health care, if you like, defense, whatever. But you don't waste other people's money. You don't, right? And I made a decision for myself. And I said to myself, being in the car, on the way from that client side to the office, I'm never going to do this again. And I got into the office, and we had 6 managers, and before 12 o'clock, I spoke to 5 of the 6 managers. And I told them, I'm never going to do this again. And I said, honestly, I don't know what I would like to do, because I don't know what's out there. And 2 weeks later, one of those managers gave me a call, and he said, Arie, I've got something for you. This is typical you. We're going to do a pilot with the Royal Navy, and the pilot will be with rapid application development. Who of you heard about rapid application development? Well, if you wave your hand, it says something about your age, right? You know that, right? Okay, just saying. But it's one of the early versions of Agile frameworks, right? This is 1994, so I started working in this. And I always say 1994 is when the experimenting started and it never stopped. And I think that's one of the characteristics of working Agile. Yesterday, at the end of the day here, with a team, I had a conversation as well. You know, it's not that you're done. And I see too often that people have a book of a framework and they say, this is it. That's it. No, that's not it. And I want to explain you this, right? This is what I would like to talk about. My message today is about true agility. My message today is about success factors, but also about, you know, the pitfalls that we go through if we do Agile work, if we do Agile transformations, right? That's what I would like to talk about. As I understand, there is a tool available where you can ask questions. Feel free to pop the questions. At the end of the talk, there will be like 15 minutes or 20 minutes for questions to be answered. Okay? Are we good? Yes. So I'm standing here. Are we good? Yes. Yeah, man. We're good. You remind me of Rob Dyrdek. You ever seen Ridiculousness? Rob, more ridiculousness, right? That's how it feels. Okay, so I want to make a drawing of a waterfall. And everybody knows the waterfall. And I assume, who of you is an Agile professional? Raise your hand. Who of you is an Agile professional? Okay, that's good. So that's almost everybody here, right? Almost everybody. But I have to be honest, you know, if I look in the Agile world today, if I walk into companies, I see people who think they are doing Agile, but I see so many of the old waterfall shit still happening. And that's why I make the drawing, right? So if you take this one, I make a very simple waterfall. And it's a very simple waterfall that I make here. Very simple. And when I say very simple, what I mean is, if you say, you know, this is analysis and functional design and technical design, development, test, pre-ops and ops, right? If you say, my friend Geronimo was here, and we were working pre-COVID. We were working in the Far East, on the other side of the world. And just this step was already 7 steps. Right? Can you imagine what people do with the thought of the waterfall and traditional management? Now, what happens is, you know, if you're lucky, we have a client here, right? And the client talks to the analyst, and the analyst says, okay, you know, I make a document out of this. And then the document goes to the functional designer, and he said, okay, you know, I make another document out of this. And that document goes to the technical designer, like I was in my last project, and you make another document out of this. And then it goes to the developer, he makes something else, what you sometimes even don't know what it is. And then we go, right, so you see, now what is the problem in this line of work? And I emphasize this because if I make a quantum leap, if you do Agile, it means that at the end of every sprint, you are in production or you are at least ready for production. This means all the work is done. So doing something like a sprint for features and a sprint for development and a sprint for test, which I see so often, that means that you have still a long way to go, okay? Now, why is it so important? What is the problem that comes out of this? The problem is us, you know, the people. Because if we communicate, and it doesn't mean whether you write or you talk or whatever you do, you text, if we communicate, the receiver will make interpretations and assumptions. Now, what do we know, Alonso, about interpretations and assumptions? They're negotiating now. What do we know about interpretations and assumptions? Right? Yeah, they're wrong. They are wrong. And you can never get interpretations and assumptions right. And you know why? Interpretations and assumptions are based on your education, on your experience, on your mood of the day. Did you have a good night or not? Did you like your breakfast or not? That defines how information comes in. If I ask every single one of you what I said so far, I will get, how many people are here? 400 different stories. And now we get back to this one, right? So what you do here is, you talk to the client. So we have here interpretations and assumptions, right? Then we write, then this document is going in, and we have interpretations and assumptions. And we have this document, here we go. And here we go. So we stack error on error on error on error. So by the end that we are here, we're in trouble. And we deliver something else than the client wanted because our communication is distorted. So that's what we need to solve. We need to solve communication distortion. And the communication distortion leads to delivering the wrong thing, the wrong functionality, the wrong product, the wrong service. And what that means is that you need to do rework to get it right? So we lose a lot of time. And then in this process, and it's still there, and maybe you know this, we have acceptance meetings. Have you ever been in an acceptance meeting? Nobody? Oh, yeah. Come on, guys. I know it's Wednesday, but come on, do a little bit with me. Huh? The point is, in those acceptance meetings, it means planning, it means having the right people in there. It takes time. I remember when I was writing that technical design document, I copy-pasted half of the functional design document into a new template of the technical design document and added some information. And then the information I added, I thought, if I ever ask any developer, he can bring that information himself. I don't need to do this, right? So we have a very inefficient process. And an inefficient process means that we lose time. And then the last one, that's also sneaky. So we know that interpretations and assumptions are wrong. But this is here, look here. Is it on the screen? Yeah, it's on the screen. Okay, so here we have the line. And this is a date, right? Here we have a date. And the client says, oh, I need to have this delivered. Now, some dates can move, but some dates are fixed because it's because of the implementation of a new law or whatever that's going on, right? And here, the client will ask, when do you think it's ready? And the moment that you say anything, you are held hostage because you said it would be April 1. Or the client says it has to be April 1 because the new law that's coming in place or a merger that's going to happen. And then we combine this with the estimates. So we make an estimation for the analysis. And we know the estimation is wrong. And most of the time, we estimate not enough. So the analysis of 4 weeks became 5, or maybe 6, right? And then the functional design was planned for 2 months, and it took 2.5. And then the technical design was planned for 3 months, and it took 4.5. But this date is still April 1. So if you work like this, any activity that you have at the bottom line of the waterfall is always under pressure. And unfortunately, in the old ways of working, what do we do at the end of our cycle? We test, right? And I have been in a project myself, a long project, waterfall project, where the time for testing was estimated for 3 months. 3 months. It was a 2-year project, 3 months of testing. But of course, this part of the project was going wrong, more. And the solution to deliver on time was, okay, we test for 1 month. So we have more, it's more complicated, and we test less. That's the solution, to be on time. So what you get is, you get very poor quality. And if you get very poor quality, what will happen is that you have to fix this, and to fix this, it takes time. We don't have time anymore. If you look what's going on in the world, look at the COVID thing that came into our lives. I mean, I remember, together with Hero working, we were in China and Czech Republic. I left China on December 17 before our Christmas. And I was supposed to be back very early February after Chinese New Year. And in that time window, it went from 0 to crisis. Right? COVID came in a matter of, 5 weeks. And I got on January 29 a call from China saying, Arie, you have plans to come to China? You better not. Right? And this means you have time to respond. Yesterday, here when I was talking, one of the clients for the company that I worked for at the time, they had a revenue of $1 billion every month. 1 billion every month. COVID came in with the lockdown, remember? It turned out that they made 92% of their revenue in store. So they lost, over a couple of weeks, they lost over 90% of their revenue. You don't have times for proof of concept and, we're going to experiment a bit and we'll see where we are. You have to have an organization that is ready to respond. So the reason I'm telling you this is, I will come back to this a couple of times during my talk, is that these characteristics of that waterfall working are hindering us. This is what we tried to solve when we wrote the manifesto. So this is what you need to take out if you want to work, right? And then, who of you is an Agile coach? Can you raise your hand? Oh, that's quite a few. Hey, so what is a characteristic of an Agile coach? What is a characteristic of an Agile coach? They have egos as big as the Eiffel Tower. And you know what an ego does? And this is the worst part. It hinders you from learning, right? That's the problem. So you need to make the extra step. And I'm telling you this because we don't like change. We are humans. We don't like change. We're like a crocodile on the riverbank. We lay there in the sunshine, and as long as I'm not hungry, I'm not moving because I'm here, I'm safe, nobody kills me. If I move, nobody knows what's going to happen, so I won't move. That's the little reptile brain that we have up here, right? So we don't like change. Change is inevitable. When we, and I say we, up to February 2001, everybody was working already for a while different. I started working differently, as I just explained, in 1994. If you talk to James Grenning, 1998. The people from Scrum, I think early 90s, I don't know exact. So everybody had a moment in time where we said, okay, we have been in this business for a long time. We have been working on that waterfall, but I'm going to experiment and do something different to see if I can overcome the problems that I just wrote down on the flip chart. Very important. And then you get the situation that, we come together, so it's 17 men, sorry for the ladies, it's 17 men coming together in the room. And what we did was, the first step was, okay, so we all work different, but we work differently different. So what we do is we are going to explain to each other how we work. And the others are going to listen. Not listen to criticize, but listen to understand. Right? Because we all work different in a different way. And if you make a summary of that moment, and John Kern, the author of FDD, he had a brilliant quote about that moment in Salt Lake City. He said, when we walked into that room, we left our egos at the door, listening to understand. So we had a couple of people that were looking into, okay, how can I improve that quality? What I just was talking about, right, on that flip chart. Some people look more in the efficiency, and other people look, okay, do I deliver the right thing? Can I create the value for my organization? And it comes to who does the work. Some people were saying, okay, how can I do it as an individual, or maybe together with somebody else? How can I deliver better work? Some people were focusing on the team, 9 people or less, and some were focusing on large groups. And the reason I'm telling you this, because now we're talking about, what Agile really is. And if you see here, for example, James Grenning with test-driven development, extreme programming, I think is here. Then we have already Lean and Kanban, present. We have here, of course, Scrum. We have, I would say here, FDD, and we have maybe Crystal here, and Adaptive here. I brought in DSDM, the Agile Project Management Framework. Right, so you can see there is a variety of frameworks. So now, looking at this, it comes to the moment to understand that you say, okay, this is Agile. And that means that if you are working Agile, or if you are an Agile coach and you help people working Agile, this, and it's not complete, right? There's more, right? This is your body of knowledge, just on the Agile side. Because if your team has a quality problem, you need to understand, okay, now I have to dive into TDD and XP because there is a lot of practices in those frameworks that will help you to improve the quality. If you have Scrum, look into efficiency problems, look into Scrum and Lean and Kanban. If you have client issues, value delivery issues, you look into FDD, Crystal Adaptive and DSDM, the practices. And because you are there together, you know that one moment you can have a problem here, and the next moment you can have a problem here. So as an agile team, as an agile department, as an agile, whatever you call it, company, right? This is what you need to embrace. This is where you need to go. And that's not easy. That's not easy. We'll come back to this later. So for me, understanding about agile, not about the framework, is this, right? That's important to understand. And it's important to understand that, and I was quoted earlier in the week, if you do one framework, you're not agile. That's a fact, because you can only solve one of the problems from the 3 that are here on that flip chart, right? And you need to... Oh, you got... Okay. Now, what is the real difference if you look at agile working? What is the difference that we are facing? Because for me, you have to understand, I mean, for you guys, right, you get your books, you go to a masterclass, but in my days, in the mid-90s, there wasn't much that you could use, right? So there was a lot of thinking, okay, how do I do this? And I thought for myself, okay, for me, it's very important that I cut out the delay. So if you ask me what is agile, I will say agile is avoiding delay by bringing new products and services to operations, avoiding delay. Now, what is the delay? Who caused the delay? People. People. If you take this one here, right, the waterfall, I just told you it's a simple version, right? So this is only if you look at the development. But when you're here at the bottom line, right, when you're there, then the legal department will say, ho, 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 ho. Before you go live, we need to check, and you cannot go live before we give our approval. And then we have the marketing and communication department that says, ho, ho, no. You have to follow all the standards and rules from the marketing and communication, like fonts and colors. And before you know it, when you think you're ready, again and again, you have to wait, you have to involve all the parties. So one of the differences in agile working is we involve all stakeholders. And we have the stakeholders talking to each other. What I see very often is this, right? We have the business, whatever the business is. We have the developers, whatever the developers is. And we put the PO in the middle. Who of you is a PO? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Because what happens here is the business will talk to the PO will talk to the team will talk back to the... So if you look what I wrote down before, it's interpretations and assumptions 4 times. In just one go. 4 times interpretations and assumptions stuck on each other. What you should do is bring those people together at the table. Remember that I talked at the beginning about interpretations and assumptions? We always have interpretations and assumptions. And that's okay. That's who we are. But if I have to do remote and written communication to check my interpretations and assumptions, it takes time. And we don't have time today anymore. It's done. So what is simpler than bringing people at the table? Because when you say something, I just instantly check with you, is this what you mean? I can maybe make a drawing or a prototype, and that takes seconds or maybe minutes to check my interpretation and assumption. And as a whole, everybody in there is now aligned. If I make a prototype, business people can look at the prototype, does it bring for me what it needs to bring? The legal people can say, okay, here, this is what needs to happen, that's what needs to happen. Technical people, architecture, developers know what has to happen. Marketing communication can say, oh, this is the font, this is the color, this is the standard of the company. And that's a matter of minutes. But what we see too often is this. And I'm sorry, if you do it like this, it means you have a long way to go, because this is old waterfall way of working. I'm sorry. Right? I'm doing like this because I'm pointing at the people of the organization. He said, Arie, you don't have to be nice. I said, okay. I'm from the Netherlands. I can do this, right? I can do this. Okay. Now, if you ask me, where are we in the time, right? Okay. If you ask me what is the real difference, I have a couple of them. I don't use PowerPoint, as you have noticed, so this is my PowerPoint, okay? So the first one is the value focus. And everybody in Agile talks about value, but nobody does it. What is value? The value is not when the product owner says it's important or it has a high priority. That's not value. Value is quantified what it should do and bring. That's value. So when my client says to me, Arie, I want an Agile transformation that leads to the number of incidents going down by 50%, that's value. He said, because that will make my company survive. I have too many incidents. That's value. When my client says to me, Arie, I'm a tech company, I need to focus on innovation. So out of this Agile transformation, I want 20% efficiency. Because then I have a day, a week for everybody on innovation. That's value. And last week, I was talking to people who have a very great project management company. They're very proud, and I think it's something to be proud of. They exist for 26 years, and they never had one project fail. Never. But the question is always, what do you measure? Do you measure that you delivered what was written down in a document? Or do you deliver what the organization needs? And most people don't know. Yeah, but the PO, sorry for the POs. The PO said it was important. No, it's not. Nothing to do with the PO. PO is a role where you bring people together and you facilitate the communication. Importance is what we calculate together. You know the acronym SMART? Specific, measurable, acceptable, realistic, and traceable in time. So going down by 50%, going down by 20%, improving by 12%. And then you can measure. So you can never say you did a successful project after delivery, because then you start measuring, did we get in the business what we were expecting from this solution? And we forget, we did the work and now we run away. Next. No, that's not how it works, right? You need to follow up on this one. So that value focus is extremely important. The second one is the decision making. Oh, it was gone, right? In this picture where I said, the PO decided, it gives me red spots on strange places of my body. Because it's not up to the PO. Because it's about the people of the business. And I want to give you an example. The people of the business really know. I want to give you an example. I was doing a project. My client's name was Simon. And Simon said, Arie, I have a big problem. I have a workflow. And the workflow says that the Dutch government says that I have to deliver 96% of the cases within 8 weeks from start to finish. If I don't, I get a 12 million euro penalty every year. And now I'm only at 84%, what comes out in time. Okay. And then I said to him, Simon, I need from you those people that are working in that workflow. It was a 7-step workflow. From every step, I need someone in that step working on a daily basis who knows exactly what's going on. There is no PO in the world that knows from every of those 7 steps exactly what's going on. Never, ever. Forget about it. The role of the PO is bringing those people who are the real business people. And by the way, it was a government, right? It was not a for-profit, it was a government. But the business people together at the table and make sure that they together can synthesize the right requirements and help them to put it into user stories and to make sure that they are ready to go into delivery sprints. So I said to Simon, I need your people, at least a day a week in that project. And he said, oh, but I are so busy. I said, do you need this solution or not? And do you want it to work or not? Do you want it to bring you to 96% or not? There's nobody in the world who has a better answer than those people. And then I said to him, oh, by the way, if in your organization I bring live a solution like this, who can stop me? Oh, we have the marketing communication department, we have the legal department, we have the architecture department. I said, good. Then I need an empowered representative from every one of those departments in my team. And one of the I'm talking about differences between traditional working. One of the differences is that normally, the legal department would say, okay, you make what you make. If you're done, send it to me, and I will look if you did it right. Right? And then the people from the legal department and the marketing department, and they came in, I said, so your role is going to change now. You're part of this team, and you're not going to check if the people did it right. You are responsible that we as a team at the end of every sprint make sure what we deliver is right. From your perspective. If you're legal, if you're marketing communication, if you're architecture, if you're developer, if you're business, right? I just talked about the 7 people from the business. That means that you have 2 things. You have a complete different way of collaboration. Completely different. Because instead of sitting behind your desk and sending documents up and down, now on a regular basis, twice a week for 30, 45 minutes, you're sitting in a room and you do, if you use Scrum terminology, you do a review. And everybody can give the feedback. And in the next session, the feedback, if it's important and valuable, is incorporated. So it means that you, from the legal department, you are responsible based on 4 or 5 feedback loops in every sprint, that at the end of the sprint, everything is according to the standards of the legal department. Nothing can stop us. That's the only way. So you have a different way of collaboration. And also you have a different way of decision making. I said to Simon, because you get in the beginning, you make a backlog, and I said, Simon, listen, those 7 people, they know what they need under their fingertips, to make that business case of you happen, right? He said, yeah. And I said, that's why I need him. And I said, just to make clear, you don't know, because you are the manager, and you are managing, but you're not doing the work, so you don't know what's needed in the work. So you need to let them. And in the way we work, we have, and that's also a difference, a very different way of handling changes. And one of the things that I hear very often, if you go with a set of stories into a sprint, those are the stories you deliver are not allowed to be changed. Bullshit. For me, complete bullshit. And it doesn't mean that we every sprint at random change what we want. Of course not. But in those moments that we come together, I call it a heartbeat. Every 2 to 3 days, you come together for 30, 45 minutes. If we together decide that a story that we had need to be changed or need to be taken out because something else is more important, read valuable, we take one out and we bring one in. Very simple. Because it's not about a fixed list. You don't want to be held hostage by a list that you made in the past. You are delivering value for your organization. That's what you need to do. But that's different decision making. And of course, in a lot of organizations, you have people who are involved in those kind of decisions. So let's look at the changes. Who of you has ever worked on a request for change? A request for change is an actor in a very bad horror movie. Right? And then we have another actor in that same horror movie, and that is called the Change Advisory Board. A group of managers, nothing else to do, and you have to fill in a form. You send in the form, and every month the Change Advisory Board will check in and will say whether you get your change. We deliver every 2 weeks. What the fuck is this? This is not how it works. We don't have this time. And by the way, they try to make a decision about something they don't understand. So Agile is also about, giving the decision-making powers there where the decisions are made best. Because people know. And that's where we need to go. And then, I'm looking at my PowerPoint. One of the things is, and this is years ago, guy comes to me, he said, Arie, we also do Agile, we don't document. I said, okay. Now the question is, what is documentation? For me, documentation is structured information that's easy to access, easy to update, and it is up to date. It doesn't say Word, it doesn't say PowerPoint or Excel or one of those tools. This is what documentation is. So any format that you choose that helps you works, as long as you don't make outdated. And one of the outdated forms of documentation, I gave you a very simple example, is maybe you made one of those in the past, the progress report. You did that one? I worked at a company, big project. We had 14 different teams working as agile as we could. It was very complicated with hardware, software, people out in the country and stuff. And there were 2 people spending 2 weeks a month on making a monthly progress report. Can you imagine what that cost? Now, if we have a big product backlog, and every sprint we take items into our sprint and we put them on the plan board. And at the end of the sprint, when they are finished, you just mark them and put them back on the big product backlog. Now I can see what the backlog was, I can see what has been delivered already, I can see what still has to be delivered, and I can see what is in progress because it's on the plan board. And if I do that very strict as a team in my daily, it means that my progress report is not containing old information, because progress reports contain old information, because they start gathering the information now. It takes me 2 days to write the progress report. I delivered on Friday, but the information was based on Monday. Right? It's old information. And if I do it like this, then I have actual information. And the good thing is, it comes out of the rituals that we do as agile teams. I don't have to spend extra time on it. It's there. Right? So we don't waste time. It's more accurate and it's up to date. These are the kind of differences that we need to understand are very important to create. And I remember, and then I want to go to the next step. I remember I was in Romania, we did a transformation. Transformation was going really well. The client got what he was looking for, the value. But at one moment in time, I walked into the elevator, you're 9 stories in the building, walked into the elevator, and one of the guys from the teams walks in and he looks at me, he said, Arie, he said, that agile of yours, man. He said, I spent more than 60% of my time in meetings. I said, huh? I said, you have a daily every morning, that's 5 to 10 minutes. Then you have every 2 to 3 days, let's say twice a week, you have half an hour, 45 minutes, you have a heartbeat. And at the end of the sprint, you have a retrospective, heartbeat, covers, review, and demo. Right? So how do you get to 60%? Yeah, I said, but I have my project progress meeting. And he started to list all the old school project meetings. And you know where it came from? If you have an average organization, it's like this, right? So this is the average. Here we have the teams, right? And here we have a middle management layer. And in that middle management layer, of course, there is somebody responsible for progress reports. And he will say, I don't give a shit about that agile of yours, but I want my progress report. So that means if you don't have the support here to make that change here, this level here will act as an impediment, a heavy impediment. You know how I like to call it? The permafrost. Because if you're here and you want to bring change, you bump into it, but I have seen it the other way around as well. People bump in from the top as well. Right? So you need to understand the things that really have to be changed. And just going into, for example, what I say, oh yeah, we work in sprints, we're agile. That doesn't work like this. It's that deeper layer that we need to understand what it brings. Let's talk about that deeper layer. Okay, so the changes, the differences that I just mentioned, if I talk about it like this, you think, logical, I can do that. But now get back to practical situation. I want to give you a metaphor, a very practical, real-life metaphor from my side. My girlfriend is from South Africa. And I'm from the Netherlands, so we drive on the right side of the road. Right? And I always say to her, you drive on the wrong side of the road. Right, that's what you need to get. And if you walk, and it's UK and Australia and there are other places in the world, of course. The point is, if you walk towards that car of her, beautiful car, it's a car that you know, car, 4 wheels, looks the same. If you open the car, you see, the steering wheel is at the other side of the car. That's interesting. Then you get into the car, and I remember the very first time that I was with her 4 years ago, where we got into traffic. She was driving, not me. She was driving, and we get to the first crossing, and there's a pickup coming from the equal crossing, pickup coming from the other side in Johannesburg traffic. And I said, tell me, how does it work here in South Africa? You know, what's the rules of preference? Oh, she said, it's very simple. Because if the car that comes first has preference. I said, you should try that in Amsterdam. You should try that. It will not work. But the point is, I can get used to this. I can learn. You know, the rules are a lot the same in South Africa, not completely. The traffic signs are a lot the same, not completely. So I have to study, right? So I study. And I go to a driver's school, and I'm going to study all the new signs and the new rules, and you know how to make a proper turn with the steering wheel on the wrong side. It's like, okay. And that's fine. So now I studied. Right now I studied. And now I'm going into traffic. I'm getting behind the wheel. And I drive slowly because it's the first time. I studied. I didn't really do it, but I studied, right? So I take my time. I go slowly. Have you ever been to Johannesburg traffic? The point is, if I drive slowly and I'm on my own, it's fine. In Johannesburg traffic, you're never on your own. There's always somebody else. And I can tell you, there is always somebody doing the things that you didn't expect, like a company or an organization. And what happens the moment that somebody does something unexpected? Your reflexes come in. And your reflexes are based on your old habits. Your paradigms are so deeply rooted that the moment that you need to get to a reflex, you use something from the past. So I go to organizations and I do agile transformations, and if you don't pay attention, like after a year you come back, and what you will see is they use all the agile worlds and they work in a complete waterfall again. Because something happens that they didn't expect, something went wrong, then they think, okay, what is the solution that we have? Let me think, and I think about what was in the past, and I implement an old solution. Agile working means innovating forward, right? That's what it's all about. So, paradigms and the reflexes are very strong. So an agile transformation, accepting the real agile work, means that we are continuously evolving and continuously changing and improving. And we don't like that. We like to read a book that tells me what to do. And then I will say, this is what it is. This is agile. No, you're reading one framework, and that brings a lot of value. But if you don't know the rest, you don't know how to behave in traffic, because different things might happen. It might consider quality, it might consider efficiency, it might consider the value of your delivery. And you need to have everything in your pocket. Right? Now, to make that change, or even, in the beginning, we didn't do transformations. I was just working this way in my commercial deliveries. You need to have one very important element in your organization in place, and that is, what do you think is the most important thing in agile transformations and agile deliveries? What do you think? The leadership team. And why do I say this? One of the things is, if we go into change and knowing that we don't like change, you need somebody to be the role model. Now, who is the best role model? The one in the hierarchy above you. And we always talk about non-hierarchy. Great, but there is. Don't worry. Don't give me that bullshit. Go into any organization, with 1,000 or 20,000 people, there is hierarchy. And you know that you have to follow what they do. So if the leadership team, or on the middle management level, if they take that role model, working and doing agile, being agile, it's easier to follow. The second one is, we talked about difference in the decision making and difference in collaboration and how you spend your time and how you document. That requires formal change. We cannot make a formal change in an organization. You need permission. Sorry, very often you're in an organization like banks and insurance companies where you need permission because somebody is responsible for the documentation and somebody is responsible for it and somebody is responsible for it. So you need the leadership team to help you to get the formal change. And then, in the situation of Johannesburg traffic, you need to have the situation where if something goes wrong, that leadership teams allows you to find an agile solution and not to implement a solution from the past. Right? So number one is the role model. Number two is bringing formal change. Number three is sustaining the change. Very important. And then, of course, you have to look at yourself. Agile is not easy in terms of there are different frameworks, and depending on where are we? Where are we? You know, depending on the problems that you have, you need to dive in. You need to say, okay, what can we do? And I want to give you an example. I do this now for 29 years, and then people will say, oh, it's a good idea, but that doesn't work for us. Okay, did you ever try? No, but it doesn't work for us. How the fuck do you know if you never tried, right? So number one, you need to try. Now the question comes to trying. What do you try? So what people tend to do with all the old paradigms in the brain that they have is say, okay, you know, I have here this book, How to do Scrum or DSDM or Adaptive or Crystal or whatever, and I read the book, but this is not going to work, and this is not going to work, and this is not. So I do this differently. And then, of course, it doesn't bring the success, and they say, see, it doesn't work. Yes, it does. I make a metaphor for you. I love cooking. Who of you loves cooking? For me, it's like the ultimate thing in the kitchen after a hard day, a hard week of work, glass of wine, cooking. And I always collect recipes, you know, from all over the world where I go, from books, from the television, whatever. And then you have those people that see a recipe and start messing up the recipe right from the beginning. And what I always say is, if you get a recipe and you look at television, Jamie Oliver, you know, whatever, one of those guys, beautiful recipe, he always makes it look brilliant, right? Like, oh man, Gordon Ramsay. If you make a recipe for the first time, you make it exactly as it was described by the person who did it and made it look beautiful and taste excellent. And then the second time, you do it again exactly the way it was described. And then it's maybe time where you say, oh, you know, I have guests coming over, and maybe they have a special diet demand, or maybe they have something that they just don't like, or maybe you like a little bit more of this, but the first couple of times, you do it exactly as it has been said, and then that's the moment where you start improving. You know how that improving, how we call that? How do we call it? Excuse me, who of you was an Agile professional? How do we call that improvement, you know, of your own work? How do we call that? Retrospective. What the fuck? What the fuck? Right, so that retrospective, if you look at where we started in the 90s, is key. So the worst thing that I can see in any organization, maybe you've seen it before, see me doing this, is the Agile playbook that tells you how to do Agile, right? We have the frameworks, start using them, retrospect, see what's going on, and improve. That's where you need to go. So what I know in Agile working, yeah, I see, thank you very much. What I know about Agile working is, because of that paradigm shift, you know, Agile working itself on the outside seems easy. But on the inside, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And when things go wrong, we don't like to look at ourselves. Right? We always point at somebody else. Somebody else. We have an expression in the Netherlands that said, if you point at somebody, there are 3 fingers pointing at yourself. Right? Take that in mind. So the question is not, oh yeah, it's the culture. Oh yeah, it's the management team. Oh yeah, it's my colleague, or it's that asshole over there, or it's, you know, it's always somebody, something, but never themselves. So the question is not about, oh, what do the other people do, but what can you do about it? Because real Agile working and real transformations, you don't do in a big bang. You take them step by step, baby step forward. And you'll have to allow yourself that Agile is not a state. It's not, we are there. I saw, supposedly it's from Winston Churchill. I don't know for sure. But it says something like, perfection is not a state. Perfection is an ambition. To reach your ambition, you need to change a lot, so perfect people change a lot. So what if I replace perfect by Agile? I will say Agile is not a state. Agile is an ambition. To reach your ambition, you need to change a lot, so Agile people, teams, organizations change a lot. And that's something to take in mind, because if there's something that the management doesn't like, it's change, right? And it doesn't mean that you throw your organization upside down all the time, but what happens in the teams, let that be subject of continuous improvement. Within the Agile context, don't implement Agile solutions. Just before this talk, we were talking about, do you know Mr. Kofi Annan? Do you know the name Kofi Annan? Who does? Kofi Annan. I think it's also getting an age point, right? Mr. Kofi Annan was the Secretary General of the United Nations, and I think he retired maybe like 20 years ago. I'm not 20 years ago, he retired. Man, global politician, beautiful books. And I had the privilege of one moment in time to sit at the table with him, with a couple of other people, and for an hour and a half, talking. And I thought, I need to get something out of this conversation with the person. I read his book. You have to read his book, amazing. Anyway, I thought I need to get out of this. My boys, I have 2 sons, were at the time 14 and 18. And I asked him, I said, at the end of the conversation, I said, listen, I said, Myanmar, at the time, economic ban, a lot of problems. And I said, what if one of my sons gets an opportunity to do something for the people in Myanmar? What do you think they should do, giving all the bans and blocks from, the big world powers that we have? And then he gave me a line. I want to get that line to you. And then I stopped. He said, Arie, tell your boys that change always starts with one person. Thank you very much. Questions, right?
Amazing. Thank you so much. We do have a few time for questions. So can you please share the link for the questions here? We already have one that I'm going to read for you. Just a moment.
Will it be here or on your phone?
On my phone.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. If someone were to start an agile transformation in a traditional, complex, averse to openness, a change environment, such as auditing in finance, what would be the North Star to have in this organization to be able to live the true agile mindset?
Yeah. The big point is in any organization, we all know this, you have to start somewhere. And what we see most of the time we have, this, right? And we have the teams here. And what I saw over the last 29 years, it starts here. Somewhere in one of those teams. People start thinking. But then, if you want to work like this, you will bump into problems the moment that you connect to another team, or the moment that you need to do up something, or the moment that you want to, change a story or whatever, like that kind of thing. So what I always say, what is very important, you have to create your own micro-environment. And it starts, and the word that I always use for this is foundations. So if you go into a new way of working, even if you do just a little bit different than it was in the past, in this very traditional organization that I get, set your foundations. And it's, one, very important, how to work in a different way. Then we have got on the functionality, and maybe on the tech aspects as well. But in this particular case, the question that I got is here. So if I take back to Simon, Simon worked for a very traditional organization, but he had an open mind. So I said to him, Simon, this is how I would like to work. And I am just an external project manager, so I can be swiped off the face of the earth by your organization. If we get into shit, I need your help. I need your backup. And Simon was here, right? And then we made a coalition. So it starts with that working agreement that you need to build, and then you can expand. The basic messages from a working agreement is that you find an ambassador a level higher than you are.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And we do have a compliment for this question. If this is the North Star that we should focus on, what would be the one that we need to be able to get rid of? The same organization, complex.
Where do we need to get rid of? Yeah. I can make very harsh words now. What we need to get rid of as a whole is understanding if you keep on doing what you always did, you will lose. And the metaphor that I make is, put on, oh, you have your sneakers on, Alonso, right? You have your sneakers on. So now we start running, you know, on a track. If you stand still, even if the other ones are just very slowly walking, they will be faster than you. So you better get moving, move forward. That's the point. You know, quality assurance systems, manuals, agile playbooks. You know, it can be a nice start, but you have to be able to move forward.
Yeah, thank you. We do have more questions here, and we have time. Okay. Would you have an advice for those who work as consultants to companies that don't understand Agile, as they are part of the stakeholders that should be constantly involved on the reviews and escalations?
Yeah. So if you are a consultant, let's say if you are an Agile consultant, and you work at a company that's not Agile, what are you doing there? I mean, unless you're in an Agile transformation. I like to make a nice metaphor. My brother, and I love him to bits, Jan is a little bit older than I am, and he is already a diabetic for 42 years. Don't sell him sugar, right? Because he doesn't want it. And that's what you need to understand. You need to understand that, you know, coming back basically to this question, right? If you are, we call it somebody who's shouting in the desert. There's nobody there, right? So you need to understand that if you are there in that organization and nobody wants it, there's always somebody else who wants it as well, right? So try to find them and build a network. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And there's one interesting question here. Could you please tell us about the choice for the Agile name?
For the Agile name itself?
Yeah.
For the word?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what happened. And we had at one moment in time, we had a conversation together on the email about it years later. I remember, so we came into that room the moment where John Kern said, oh, we left our egos at the door. So we explained to each other, okay, you know, I do this, I do XP, TDD or FDD, I did TSDM, and we explained to each other how we worked. And then we said, okay, that's all different stuff. There's a big overlap, but there's all different stuff. So what is it that we're trying to achieve? So we talked about that one word. And I remember that we talked about flexible. So if we would have decided differently, it would have been the Flexible Manifesto. But then we came to the word agile, which means that you are able to maneuver. Right? And especially the problem in the waterfall where you have a fixed list of requirements, where if you look into the Agile frameworks, most of them will support strongly low-level decision-making on changing requirements, because it's never about the requirements, it's always about the value that the solution brings. Leave the decision about the requirements with the people who know what they're talking about. And that's where agility comes from.
Awesome. In the multiverse, it's called flexible. Yeah, let's go for one more. Okay, what would you say for teams who are not software development that are afraid to use Agile?
Who of you is in the IT business? Okay. Let me tell you something. I made a mistake in 2001, in February 2001. I made a mistake. I was just not alert when the word software came into the manifesto. We should have put something in like a product or a solution or a service. And the reason I say this, already in the 90s, so before writing the manifesto, I never did just software. I mean, if I made a new product, you know, a new software product, I would have a legal team working on it. I would have an audit trail team working on it. I would have the marketing and communication team working on it. I would have education and training working on it. And all those teams were working as one, you know, connected teams, scaled, if you like, into a delivery. And they were all working agile, all in the same way. They were all represented in the heartbeat. So the fact that people think that agile is only for IT, sorry, it's wrong. Just so you know, it's wrong. I never used agile exclusively in IT only, never. So forget about it. So marketing campaigns, how did you guys do this conference? Did you do it in an agile way? There you go, you did it in an agile way. I did recruitment campaigns in an agile way. Definition of done, people being able to do different tasks, not just one task, all agile working, plan board, delivery, sprints. It's not up to IT alone, sorry. Just take one step back. If you're stuck in that paradigm of IT, take one step back and just say, I'm a recruitment team or a marketing team or whatever you are, and I am making something. And what are you making? I am making 25 new people in the company with a specific profile. Good, because they will bring value to the organization. How do we do this? And then you break it down and you start doing definitions of done and backlog. And I did it, so it's not hypotheticals, just so you know.
Okay, one more. So how can we help leadership executives to change their waterfall mindset? Can you give us some tip?
Yeah, physical violence. Yeah. No. I only wish, right?
Wishful thinking.
No. Let me say something. If you're in a non-agile environment, that can be on the team level or on the big level, right? And if you move to agile, if you start doing the transformation together, you make that decision, just know that you will lose people. Because for some people, the paradigms are too strong, they can't make the change. And one of the things that I learned in the 29 years that I do this is what happens. So we have a team, 2, 4, 6, 8. We have a team of 8, right? Including us, 10, right? 10. And of course, it's Luis Felipe. He's always the pain in the ass, right? He's always, and he doesn't want to. What you tend to do is you tend to focus on that one person who doesn't want it. And then the other 9, you forget. And what I do in those kind of situations, I spend time, of course, but then I start spending time with the others. It's like you're doing a masterclass and you have the same person asking the same negative questions all the time. And then I say, okay, now we stop. I gave you a lot of my time. More questions that you have, you can ask during the break or after the session at the end of the day. But now I will give my time to the other people who have other questions. And then how can I optimize with the other 9 the work? Maybe if you see this, it will convince you to join. But there is a chance that you don't, because some people will just never change. And that's what you have to accept. So don't waste your energy and use a little bit of physical violence.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arie. We
My
do
pleasure.
have a lot of questions, so I'm sure you're going to be around to talk to people.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but we have a masterclass Friday and Saturday. If you have more questions, join in the masterclass.
Yes.
Right, so come on up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Obrigada, it was awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.